네, 안녕하세요, 여러분. 저는 jetbrains 한국 총판 단군 소프트의 김우성입니다. 오늘 라이더 팀시티 웨비나 시리즈 중 그 두 번째 에피소드인 라이더와 팀시티로 언리얼 게임 개발 속도 높이기 세션의 호스트로서 사회를 맡게 되었습니다. 지난 세션에는 유니티 게임 개발에 라이더와 팀시티가 어떻게 사용되는지 알아봤고 여러분들의 많은 피드백 덕분에 비교적 성공적으로 마무리되었습니다. 감사합니다. 오늘은 이런 jetbrains 툴들이 언리얼 개발 시에 어떻게 여러분에게 도움이 되는지 확인해보는 시간을 가지도록 하겠습니다. 네, 다음은 간단한 아젠다를 설명드릴 텐데요. 저희가 이제 맷님과 다니엘님이 이제 영국에 계시기 때문에 이제 녹화를 해서 이제 자막을 달아서 스트리밍을 할 예정이고요. 이제 곧바로 만나보실 수 있을 것 같고요. 그 스트리밍 끝나고는 이제 퀴즈가 준비되어 있습니다. 그리고 이제 질의응답 라이브 Q&A를 한 다음에 이제 두 번째 마지막 퀴즈 지나고 이 세션을 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 다시 안내드리지만 라이브 Q&A 때는 이제 유튜브 댓글에 질문을 남겨주시면은 저희가 자막이 담긴 이제 세션의 실시간 스트리밍이 끝난 후에 맷 또는 다니엘님이 직접 답변 드릴 예정이니까요. 참고해 주시고 필요한 경우 제가 중간에 통역을 지원해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 네, 실시간으로 접속해 주신 분들에 한해서 신청하실 수 있는 선물을 또 준비해 봤는데요. 이제 바로 jetbrains 머천다이즈 스토어에서 jetbrains 상품을 살 수 있는 상품권인데요. 다양한 jetbrains 굿즈들을 직접 선택하고 원하는 배송지로 직접 수령하실 수 있으니까 참고 부탁드리고요. 화면을 보시면은 다양한 굿즈들을 확인하실 수가 있겠습니다. 한 70유로 상당의 약 원화로 10만 원 정도 상당이니까요. 많은 기대 부탁드립니다. 선물 당첨은 이제 실시간 방송 중에 말씀드린 두 번 있을 퀴즈 이벤트에서 선착순으로 정답을 맞춰 주시는 분들에게 돌아갑니다. 퀴즈는 Q&A 시작 전 한 번, Q&A 끝나고 한 번이니까 많은 참여 부탁드립니다. 네, 모든 세션은 이제 녹화되고 있어요. 그래서 유튜브 jetbrains TV 채널에 공개가 될 예정이므로 언제든지 다시 보실 수 있는 점은 참고 부탁드립니다. 하지만 지금 이제 채널을 고정해 주셔야 퀴즈 이벤트 혜택들 받아보실 수 있으니까 채널 고정 부탁드립니다. 그럼 여기까지 서두가 좀 길었는데 본격적인 스트리밍 시작 전에 우리 발표자인 맷 앨리스님과 다니엘 갈로님을 무대로 모셔보겠습니다. So let's welcome Matt and Daniel to the stage.
Hello there.
Hi. How have you been since the last webinar in Korea?
All good, thank you. It's here in the UK, the weather is getting a little bit better, but only a little bit.
네, 두 분 다 영국에 계시는데 날씨가 조금씩 좋아지고 있다고 하네요. It's been heavy rains today in Seoul, South Korea.
Yeah, I know what that's like.
네, 오늘 비가 많이 왔다고 하니까 그거 뭐 어떤 건지 영국 날씨를 말씀해 주셨네요. So without further ado, should we just before that, I'm sorry, you have to say hello to our audience. Should we
Of
start
course.
with Matt?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be back again, and I hope you enjoy the session. There's some great content in there, and I hope you learn some new stuff.
네, 이제 맨님도 이제 한마디 해주셨는데 오늘 준비된 거 많으니까 잘 들어보시고 많은 것들을 가져가셨으면 좋겠다라고 하셨습니다. And Daniel?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, hi everyone. It's great to be here. I'm a solutions engineer on the TeamCity team, and yeah, excited to be showing you our Unreal integration in TeamCity today, along with Matt. Thanks.
네, 언리얼과 이제 팀시티를 연동하는 부분에 대해서 좀 담당해 주시는 솔루션스 엔지니어인 다니엘 갤로님의 인사도 들어봤습니다. Without further ado, yeah, shall we just go ahead with the recordings?
Sounds good to me. Let's go.
Let's go. 그러면 영상 바로 시작해 보도록 하겠습니다.
Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to show you some things with Rider before we talk to Daniel and have a look at what's going on with TeamCity. But this is Rider with an Unreal project already open. We're using the Lyra starter game as an example. And I'm going to show you a few things about how Rider can help you with your Unreal game. So the first thing that is really good with Rider is that it's really good about being able to find your code. So if you want to jump around your code and find things, you can just start typing. We index everything. So we index your game, and then in the background, we'll index the engine. So you can actually very quickly go and find anything that you want. So you can just start typing and it can quickly match classes, or you can find, you can hit tab as well. You can go and find classes, you can find files, and you can find symbols, and you can very quickly navigate around your code. So I can find my camera mode class, for example, or I could go find some sort of manager component. And you can see there it is finding various different things. And if I wanted to find the camera manager component, I can easily hit tab and go and find classes and navigate around. The other useful keyboard shortcut we've got is Alt-Enter. So Shift-Shift and Alt-Enter are the really interesting keyboard shortcuts that you need to know. Alt-Enter brings us up a context menu where there's lots of things you can do with your code. There's always something you can do. So for example, I'm on a class here. I hit Alt-Enter and I can generate overriding members. I can move function definitions, create a derived class, add documentation, and a whole lot more. The interesting things as well down here are the extra pieces. Let me just scroll this up a little bit. Are the extra items down here, navigate to, refactor this, inspect this, generate code, and our AI actions as well. These are the entry points into pretty much all of the functionality that Rider gives you. So Shift can help you search for your code, and Alt-Enter then can help you do other things. It can change your code, but it can help you navigate. For example, here, so we get another context menu of different things we can do. We can go and find the declaration or the implementation of something. We can go find the base symbols or the derived symbols, find usages as well. So it's great for being able to navigate around. Other items we've got are refactorings. So I can quickly rename something. This will do a safe rename. So it'll just, instead of find and replace in a text editor, it'll just make sure that only those items are renamed, the correct items are renamed. We've got some inspections as well, so we can find code issues and type hierarchies. I'll have a look at some of these later, and we can generate code as well. Lots of useful things here to be able to generate constructors, destructors, equality members, hash functions, and so on. Let's have a quick look at the navigate menu. And so we've got the items here in our navigate menu. If I want to go and find my base symbols, I could just start typing. This is a great tip for Rider. I can type to search inside a menu, and I can just start typing, go and find my base symbols, and this will quickly navigate me to different areas of the code. So again, I can use the navigate to item here, or I can use the keyboard shortcut as well. And if I, again, base symbols, and I can then very easily navigate around and find my interfaces or my UObject, my UObject-based utility, and very quickly navigate class hierarchies. Let's just jump back here. One of the other useful items we've got, let's try and use view target here. If I bring my navigate to menu item up here, the item we've got is find usages. Find usages is very smart because it can go across your code and find where this particular field is being used, that this particular member is being used. And so you can see here that it is being used inside this CPP class file and the .h header file as well. And if you kind of navigate around, you get a little preview of it too. We can also group by usage type. So we can see all the different ways it's being used here as well. So you can see how something is being read. So we've got some read access going on, and then also some binding values there, so where it's being set. So this is a very useful way if you're looking to see how is this view target member used, then you can see here and you can navigate around. And another top tip is if you're working with a list of these items here and you're working your way through trying to find a particular case that's happening, you can hit the delete button and it'll put a line through it there so you can keep a track of the items you've looked at already. So find usages is a very smart way of being able to see how your code is being used. Another way you can do that, though, is with a feature called the call hierarchy. So if I just go to my camera mode, and here I want to use another keyboard shortcut here to find the members in the file, just start typing again. I want the blend function here. And what we can do is we can use our inspect this menu item from Alt-Enter and use incoming calls. And now what Rider will do here is like a recursive find usages. It can see now that blend stack calls this blend method. And then if I expand that further, I can say evaluate stack calls blend stack. And I can keep on going, and I can see a call stack that I can work with to see how my code is being used. This is a great way to read and learn and understand your code, what's happening. So I can see now that capture scene is calling get camera view, which eventually calls my original blend function. So I can then follow things through and understand what my code is doing. And it's not just navigation that we're good at. Rider is very good at code editing as well. Lots of interesting things we can do here. So if I start to make a change, firstly, it'll check things out. So I've got integration with the project that we have in Perforce, and I can click OK. I can also say, do not show this dialog in future. So it'll automatically check things out for me. And now I'm ready to start typing. We've got great command code completion, and I can do get camera view. And again, we don't need to type the whole thing. We can match what the values are that are there. And if I select those, I can do 0 and capture view and automatically sort of complete my code. There's a few things that Rider can do that are quite smart. So for example, if I don't know whether this should be a dot or an arrow operator, I can just start typing and Rider will fix it up for me. So Rider understands when things should be called through a pointer syntax or through the dot syntax, and it'll fix those up. Other integration we've got with the version control is that I can easily roll back changes as well. So I can remove changes that I don't want to use. Other things we can do is we can create a new class very easily. So let me just go into my game over here. So one thing that Rider allows you to do is instead of having to go into the game editor itself, create a new C++ class, regenerate project files, then come back to the IDE and reload everything, is we can actually just create a new item straight from Rider here. So we've got the ability to create an Unreal class, and we can then give it a name. We can decide what our base class is going to be, whether it's a slate widget or a scene controller or a player state or whatever. And then we can place it where we want it to be and then create it. Alternatively, we've got templates for creating an Unreal test class as well. So I can have a simple class or a complex task there. Let's call this one my complex test. And we'll just select our template there, and it will very quickly generate items for me. And again, it'll ask us to ask us if we want to add that into version control. And again, I can check my don't ask again. So things will automatically get added for me the next time I make a change. So now we've got some tests generated. We can add in the logic for that, and we can work with that. You can see here we've got a little arrow here, so we can actually run our tests too. And we'll come back to that. We'll see some of that in a little bit. The other nice things that we've got going on here is things like support for Slate. So if I just jump to my, there it is, my another widget file, you can see we've got a sort of a Slate DSL item here, but it's all kind of formatted all as a single line. We can actually Alt-Enter on that, use our reformat and cleanup, and do reformat selection. And Rider will reformat this, but it'll lay it out in the style of the Slate DSL support that we know and understand. So it'll give us that nice formatting. And you can see I've got another long line here. And if I select this and do the same thing, then we can see we get it reformatted again. But we can also see that we've got items here which are all on a single line, and it's like perhaps I wanted those to be split more like that on multiple lines. So what I can do is I can select my code, go back into my reformat and cleanup Alt-Enter menu item, and go down here to the configure code style. This gives me now a dialog with all the different options that are available in this particular bit of code to which controls formatting. And so one of the items here is we've got slate formatting options, and we've got wrap slate chain calls. This one says chop if long or multi-line, and what I can do is change that to be chop always, and that will show me that actually that gives me the format I want, so that I want a new item on every single line. I can then click save as comments, so that will always apply in this particular case here, or I can save it to, let me just move this dialog over a little. I can click save to save it to defaults, or I can click the little arrow next to it and save it to my team shared settings there, and I can then commit that into source control and share that with my team as well, so my team can have the same formatting settings that I've got. Now, the other thing that I'd like to show you is some of the refactorings we've got. I mentioned renames as well. So if I do Alt-Enter here and I come up and get my refactor this menu, one of the items we've got is change signature. So I can add a new parameter into my method here. We've also got rename. So I can rename the whole class S, another widget. Let's just call this one S, the only widget. And we can then update code for that, and it'll run through and it'll rename my files. So now I've got a file there which is now called the only widget.cpp and .h, and you can see it's updated all of the references in this file, and if we go to the header file, it's updated it there as well, which is really useful. There's lots of inspections that Rider gives for your code. So if I go to my inventory components, then you can see there's a number of useful sort of inlay hints that we give here as well. So we sort of understand what your code is doing and annotate your code and show you useful things. So for example, here we can see we've got this FMT thing here to show you that this is the format parameter that's going on. There's also a little icon here to show you that there's a user-defined conversion here. So we've got this instance member which is being automatically converted into a different type. So give you lots of little hints about what's changing in the code there. Another useful one is that the value here is being passed as a reference rather than as a pointer. And then we've got some inspections down here as well. So you can see we've got this broadcast change message has got an underline highlight for it. And Rider is telling us that this member function can be made const. So this is where we can really use the power of Alt-Enter, and we can then get a quick fix to be able to change this and to change our function to be to become a const value here. We've got a similar entry here, a similar warning here for the entry parameter that says that this can be made const as well. So a quick Alt-Enter will give us the ability to add const and update our code there as well. If we then have a look at a slightly different one, let's go over to our cheat manager. We can see now we've got a couple of items. Member function can be made const, member function can be made const again, and we've got 3 of them here. So I could go through line by line and change each one, use Alt-Enter to change each one. Or what I could do is use my Alt-Enter menu, make member function const, and then expand that menu there. And I've got options where I can change it just for this file, this folder, or across the whole project or solution. One of the other inspections that we've got, which is rather nice, is if I go to keyboard input.cpp, we've got some items here. For example, we've got some include files which are grayed out. These have got these are include files which are not being used. There's nothing being brought in by those include files that is being used inside this file. So what we can actually do is gray it out and give you an Alt-Enter item to remove all the unused include directives in the file. And so then that will very quickly help you to keep your code clean, but also then to reduce the amount of code that's being compiled for each file. which is a very useful feature to have. And one last one, if I go over to my subsystem, you can see that shift is very quick for navigating around and being able to find code. And if I have a look at my C++ file, we've got an item here which is telling us that we actually have a member which is not being initialized by the constructor there. So again, a quick Alt-Enter can add some items here. So Rider is making sure that your code is properly initialized and making it very quick and easy for you to initialize and work with code. Let's just jump over here. One more thing to show, which is really useful, is in these tooltips, we can sort of hover over the name of an item and it gives us a little bit of quick documentation there. So it shows us the class name, but it also gives us the information such as the size of the class itself and also the alignment. So that's a really useful way of knowing how your classes are going to be laid out in memory. And then if we go to something which has been brought in from the Unreal Engine game itself, such as a game instance subsystem, you can see that we add some a link to some documentation here. And so I can click that, and that will open up items on the other screen. And while this one doesn't take me directly to a particular documentation page, it sort of brings me up to the search so that I can very quickly then find information about this particular class and use it then to learn how to use my Unreal code. Another set of nice features that Rider has is working with Unreal's RPC functions for working when you're in a client-server situation. So, for example, we've got a demo function here, which is been marked with the client function, and Rider is telling us that we don't have the related function implemented. We don't have the client game started _ implementation. That has yet to be implemented. But Rider can help us there, so we can Alt-Enter again, generate our definition, and we've got an implementation built for us there. I'm going to just put that at the bottom of the screen there so I can show you a couple of other things. If we add the with validation flag, we get another warning here to tell us that we don't have the implementation class, we don't have the validate class either, but we can quickly Alt-Enter, generate it in our C++ file, and you can see there that it's been generated there. We will immediately get a warning there to tell us that we don't have a return value. The other interesting thing is that Rider understands the link between these files. It understands that server set running is related to server set running implementation and validate as well. So if I use my refactorings items here, refactor this, and if I go to rename and I want to rename server set running now, for example, then I can do a rename. The first thing Rider will do here is it will offer to add a call redirect. So any serialized data that we've got already will automatically pick up the new name. So let's check that and let's carry on. But then the next thing we see is that we've got server set running now in my header file. And if I look at my C++ implementation file down below, then we've got server set running now implementation and server set running now validate as well. So Rider is great at being able to rename those related files. And in fact, if we click these items in the gutter here, these gutter icons, then we can actually quickly navigate around to our different items there. I can navigate to my validate items or to my implementation items. And speaking of the reflection macros, we've got great support for those as well. So for example, here we can see if we look at transient, there's two things going on here. I'll explain something in a minute. I'll explain why we're getting the error there in a minute. But you can see now we've got the transient item is being documented there, so we can understand what our uProperty parameters are all about. I can do the same with blueprint assignable. We get the documentation for that. We also, if I wanted to add a new one, we have code completion as well, and we show the documentation summary as we step through those as well. So if we have a look at this now, if we don't have a uProperty on this particular component there, you can see we got a warning here, and Rider's telling us that the member is being used, but it could be destroyed at any time through garbage collection. So we actually need to tell the reflection system that it needs to be tracked, and so it shouldn't be garbage collected while it's still in use. And finally, then I wanted to show a few more items here, which is really useful. Is that Rider will actually run the Unreal header tool for you while you type. So, for example, here, if we uncomment this item here, we've got a property there which tells us that we've got a blueprint getter using the get health item, but that doesn't exist. There's no get health property there, and so the Unreal header tool is actually giving us a warning. We are running that while you type, which means that you get this information before you have to do a build, and so it gives you quicker feedback as you are working. We can do a similar item here, saying that a replicated function can't have a return value. So any error that you would normally see under Unreal header tool, then you can also get it shown to you in the editor there as well. So if you've got an error in your specifiers for your ufunction macro there, then we'll show it and we'll highlight that in the code as you type. And looking at blueprints as well, we've got great support for blueprints. We don't just index your code and understand how your code is being used. We know how your code is being used inside blueprints too. So if we jump back to our camera mode class, one of the things you can see, if I zoom in just a little bit, is we annotate each class with an indicator here to show you that it's being used inside blueprints. And I can click that and it shows us which blueprints it's being used in. And in fact, I've got the game editor running right now. So if I select that, we actually bring the editor, we actually show the editor there, so you can edit it, you can work with that directly in the Unreal editor as well as in your code there. So we could very quickly sort of navigate around, use that to sort of work and integrate well with the Unreal editor itself. And it's not just the fact that we understand the classes are being used in blueprints, we also know how the serialized data is being used in blueprints as well. So for example, here we've got a camera tag there, and you can see what's being set just by clicking this serialized field here. We can see that the value 70 is being set inside this particular blueprint. And in fact, if we look at blend time here, we can see that this value is being used in two different blueprints. And in fact, if we select that, we've got our editor here. We can make a quick, if I search blend, we can say blend time here. We can see the value there is 0.22. Let's change that to 0.35. And then if we make sure to check that out and save it, if we jump back to Rider, we can immediately see that that is reflected. So we're very quick about being able to keep your blueprints up to date incrementally as they change. So it's a great way of being able to see how your code is being used, not just inside code, but also in blueprints. So in fact, what we can do here as well is if we go to navigate to and use our find usages item again, then we get to see how it's being used in code, C++ and header files, but we can also see down here that it's being used, there we go, inside, if we wait for the presentation assistant to go away, there we go, we can see how it's being used inside our assets as well. And I should be able to, so if we close that, and then we can move on. Other useful things we can do with blueprints is while debugging, we can show the call stack. We can show blueprints inside the call stack. I'm not connected to the debugger at the moment, so I'm just going to quickly show you a screenshot of that, which is really useful there. We're able to sort of filter things out. We can, when you're debugging, you can view a call stack, you can show the blueprint frames, you can show C++ frames from the Unreal Engine, or collapse those down, because you can normally get very large call stacks from Unreal itself. But with a blueprint there, we highlight it as a blueprint itself and give you the name of that. So again, when you are debugging, you get the context that you're working inside a blueprint. And debugging is very easy as well. It's a single click button up here. You've got the run button, you've got the debug button, and you've got the drop down there for run configurations. On the side here, we've got a build button, and this build is also hot reload enabled, so that it will build and automatically hot reload your code. and you can drop it down here and choose whichever configurations you want it to be. We've also got a nice Unreal Engine button here for giving us more information and more access to some of our play parameters there, so I can change the number of players, the mode that I'm working in, and so on. And we've also can change play mode as well, so I can click the play button here, and we can see now we've started. If I just close these blueprint editors, we can see we're now in play mode. I can use this here to actually pause it or even stop as well. So we've got great integration with Unity itself, with Unreal itself. Other useful features with integration is that we bring the Unreal log into Rider itself. And we've got items here for being able to decide whether to show me messages, warnings, or errors. I can filter things based on category as well. And one thing we do is we parse the logs as well. So we understand when there's a reference to a class. So I can click on that and navigate to my U world or to my cleanup world as well. So again, we bring that data into the editor where it's most useful, and then allow you to navigate around based on that item there too. We also show you the Unreal Build tool, so you can see what's going on with the logs of the Unreal Build tool. Last couple of things to show is great support for testing. As we saw, we added a complex test through the templates earlier. And what we can do is we can recognize when these tests are written in code there. We get a little icon in the gutter there, which we can click, and we can just start running them. Or we can debug them too, put in a breakpoint and debug our code. Or we can use our Unit Test Explorer there to look and find all of the tests that we've got in a class or in the projects, and we can then sort of very easily right-click on those and then run those tests as well. So I can run these tests here. Let's just run everything there, and it'll just make sure that all my code is up to date, which I shouldn't have edited all my code. And let's just try that one again. Oops, unit tests, run those codes. One more. In fact, let's just roll back those changes. Perforce reverts. And if we just run the tests again, that should build and run our tests. And now we can see our tests have been run and they're all successful. If there are any errors, we'd get a nice stack trace, which we'll be able to click through to navigate to our code and run with it. The last thing I want to show you is the support we've got for the AI Assistant, which is going to be helping you use AI to understand your code, to work with your code, and to hopefully improve your code as well. So if I just jump back to my camera mode class, what I can do here, in fact, let's go to the C++ file. What I can do here is, let's go with update stack here. I can use Alt-Enter again. We've got AI actions at the bottom here. If I select that, we get a number of items that we can do here. The interesting one we've got is explain code. What that will do is it'll take that particular function, it'll ask the AI assistant then to explain this code for us. And this is a great way of being able to understand your code, learn what your code does, and essentially get the AI assistant to break it down and explain step by step what's happening in this particular code. We've got a chat window here, which is where everything is sort of explained to you, and you can then sort of have a conversation with the AI assistant. If I create a new chat there, I can ask questions like how to interpolate 2 points. And the AI assistant has lots of information about the project that you're working in. So it understands it's C++, it understands that it's Unreal, it understands what's going on if you're asking it information like what does this code do or what are my current changes, and it can give you lots of information and help you learn concepts such as interpolation there, or even APIs as well. So I can say, does Unreal have any methods for this? And I don't have to state again what it is I'm asking. The AI assistant can understand my concept, my current context, and find information there. So it gives me the information of FMath LERP and shows me a couple of examples of how to use that, which is really useful. Great way of learning how to do things. So just to finish off then, if we go back to our Perforce integration, we have a look at our local changes, then we can see that there's a number of things going on. I'm going to roll a few things back. Look, yes, there's our changes to the core redirect because I've renamed my server set running mode. I rolled that back, so I need to roll back this change as well, so I can revert that. And in fact, let's just revert a few other things so I don't need to commit those. But if I'm ready to commit some information now, I can use the commit button here. We can use the AI assistant here too, as well, to understand what it is that's been changed, generate a commit message for us, and it shows us that we've got our new widget class, the complex test that was introduced from the template earlier, and I'm happy with that as a commit message, and then I can submit that, and that's now going to be sent to my Perforce server. We can check in our code, that'll be pushed to the server, and we should now be ready to hand over to Daniel. So Daniel, would like to show us how this is going to work with TeamCity?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks for the cool demo on Rider for Unreal. Awesome. So I'm sharing my screen here and I'm logged into my TeamCity server. Matt's just made a commit to Perforce, and we can see that as a pending change here over in TeamCity. So I've got the Lyra project configured as a whole build pipeline over in TeamCity, and we'll see how this is configured in a moment. But the Lyra project is configured to point to my Perforce server, and the way we do that, under the project settings, we have VCS routes, and you can have multiple VCS routes or repositories or Perforce streams for a particular TeamCity project. And you can see we've got two Perforce streams here, one for the engine, one for the game. And we're also storing the TeamCity configuration as code inside of a separate Git repository. So you can combine all of these repos and Perforce streams under a single project. So how this project is configured, we're actually leveraging Unreal's BuildGraph. So what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to click the run button to get this build on its way. And with the change that we see here, we can hover over and see Matt's commit message that was generated by AI Assistant. We can see the files that were edited and added. One of the really nice things is we do include a built-in diff viewer inside of TeamCity. So for any text-based files, we can come into this and see the exact files that were modified. So I'm going to go over to IntelliJ just to show you how the actual project is configured. So if you're not familiar with BuildGraph, essentially in Unreal, there's this concept of BuildGraph scripts where you have an XML file that defines the structure and how things are being built for the engine, for the project. And what we do in TeamCity is we can pass this file, and if we go down a bit here, we can see that there are multiple agent nodes, and these are responsible for defining the different jobs for building the editor and tools. And if we scroll down a bit further, there's a section here for running the editor tests. So for each of the platforms, and we're building the editor and game for Linux and Windows. So for those two platforms, we'll be running the editor automation tests for a particular platform, and that's being passed in as a parameter. And if we go over here slightly, we can see we're running the Unreal Engine editor automation tests, and I'm running the foo feature tests, so a subset of the tests inside of the project. So we have all of these nodes that define the entire structure of my build pipeline. And what we do in TeamCity is we pass this file. And the way we do that, if I go over to my build configuration here and we look at the settings, There is a dedicated build step for working with Unreal Engine. So if I go to the Add Build Step screen, as well as the various other different types of build steps that we include, such as .NET, Node.js, etc., we also have an Unreal Engine build step. This is something we added into TeamCity fairly recently. So if I just go back to my already configured build step, and scroll down here a bit, what we're doing is we are defining the command we want to execute. So I could just choose the build cook run command or run automation, but we've got the BuildGraph command that's selected. We point that to a BuildGraph script, so the XML script I just showed over in my IDE. The exact target, so the exact element or node inside of that script to execute, and we pass in the different parameters. So when I was passing in the different platforms, we can see the syntax we were using here. So we're building for Linux and Windows 64. The target configuration is shipping, and those are all parameters being passed down to the BuildGraph script. And then finally, one of the really powerful features is we do support distributed BuildGraph support. So this means that every node or every part of the build pipeline that's defined in the BuildGraph script is or can be automatically distributed across multiple build machines. So the way TeamCity is structured is you have the server, which we're looking at here. This is where we do all of the configuration and all of the projects are visible. We then have one or more build agents. And for this project, we've got two build agents connected to the server. And these are AWS EC2 instances, one for Linux, one for Windows. And we can see this is running a distinct part of my build pipeline. So if you were to scale this up to even more build agents, either dynamically using TeamCity's auto-scaling functionality, or if you manually connected a build machine to TeamCity, it would run the build across more machines, which would shorten the time it takes to run the overall build pipeline. And I keep saying build pipeline. Let me switch over to switch over to here, and we can see the actual build chain itself. So in TeamCity, we call a build pipeline a build chain, and we can see what's been generated from that BuildGraph script. So we've passed all of the different agent nodes from my BuildGraph script, and the building of the editor for Windows and Linux, we can see here. We can see the run editor automation tests for Win 64 and Linux. Those have all completed successfully. We can click on one of those finished jobs, and we can go to the tests tab and see the test results. And we can also drill down and show the test history. So for all of the previous test runs, we can see exactly how long it's taken for that test to run, so just a couple of milliseconds, and we can see the status of that test over all of the previous runs. The build is failing for some reason, but I'm not too worried about that. That could just be Matt's dodgy code. But we've got an already finished build pipeline that we can go back to, so we'll just focus on the previous one that I ran earlier. And we can see lots of nice green check marks, which is really cool. But in terms of the configuration of this project, you can do all of this through the user interface. So you can come into TeamCity, you can add a Unreal build step, like I showed on the edit screen a moment ago. But we do also support configuration of the project through code. So when you enable this, you get a .TeamCity folder either in the same repository or Perforce depot as your project, or you can store the TeamCity configuration in a completely separate repository or Perforce depot. So inside of my TeamCity folder here, I have a settings.kts. So in TeamCity, we adopt Kotlin DSL as the configuration as code strategy. So this is a much more capable approach than using kind of something more simplistic like YAML. So for this particular project, I am focusing on the BuildGraph subfolder here. So I have a subproject called BuildGraph, which is the node we see over in TeamCity. And I've got a build configuration presented as this additional file here. I have a few parameters defined because we have some shared data storage that's being used across all of the agents. And we can see I've got the Unreal Engine build step here. So you get full syntax highlighting if you're using an IDE like IntelliJ, because I've added the pom.xml as a Maven project. So we get full code completion, syntax highlighting, and it's a really nice way to define the Unreal Engine build step through code. So you can see the whole configuration here. If I were to make changes to this, I can do two-way synchronization. So TeamCity can pick up the updated configuration. And likewise, if I change something over in the TeamCity UI, that can also update the configuration as code if needed. So over in TeamCity, let me show you a bit more about how the build agents are configured. So I've manually attached the Linux and Windows agent to the TeamCity server. If we look at the Linux agent and go to the parameter screen, how TeamCity knows how to distribute the jobs, we need to add some parameters to the build agent. So under the parameters tab, we've got Unreal Engine.BuildGraph.agent.type. So this defines or tells TeamCity which parts of the build pipeline or the BuildGraph script this particular agent is able to execute. So the different Linux options there. I also have a shared data directory defined, and we're using AWS FSx, so a file system that can be shared between the Linux agent and the Windows agent. So all of the intermediate builds are being saved to that location. The build agents themselves, these are persistent build agents. So after the first time or the very first time you run the build, any subsequent builds should be much faster because it's reusing the same workspace. We don't have to do a clean checkout every time. There are various ways you can repeat that with single-use build agents. If you would prefer to tear down your build environment every time and spin up a new, fresh agent, you could either attach a persistent volume that's used for the storage, or you could bake in a snapshot of the workspace into the image so that when you create an instance from that image, you have a recent snapshot of the workspace already baked in to the build agent itself. So that's a quick overview of the build agents. Going back to the projects screen, let me go to the project settings because there's a few more things I want to show on here. So on the parameter screen, if there are any kind of global parameters you want to define for the entire project, you can do that through the parameter screen. So you can add configuration parameters, and those could be of various different types. They could be like a text type, it could be password type, and the value will be obfuscated in the UI and in the build log. Or you can do things like remote secrets and bring in secrets from something like HashiCorp Vault, and those parameters can be used at build time. Or something like a select box where you have a drop-down containing various different selectable items. On the connection screen, this is where you can define various different connections to external services. A good example would be maybe you want to do a deployment of something to AWS, or your build agent needs to do something within your AWS account. So you can define a AWS connection, and the connection settings you define here can be used for generating temporary credentials that can be issued to the build agents as and when they need to authenticate with AWS services. Various other different types of connections. So I can also define things like a Slack connection if you want to set up Slack notifications to a particular channel. We do also support issue tracker integrations. If you're using something like Jira or UTrack, you can integrate with an issue tracker and have full integration between the issues and the build that those issues are mentioned in. Also in the project settings, we have a screen called Cloud Profiles, and this enables you to define a cloud provider whereby TeamCity can spin up build machines as and when builds are added to the queue. So if I wasn't making use of persistent build agents that were manually attached to the TeamCity server, I could set up my own or define my own cloud account like AWS EC2. And this would allow me to authenticate with my AWS account and define which particular images or instances, excuse me, which particular instances or images I want to have available for TeamCity to be able to use. So TeamCity can spin up as many agents as required if that's needed. Under the version settings screen, this is where you can enable the configuration as code. I temporarily disabled it just so I could show some of the edit screens, but I can re-enable it and choose the Kotlin option, and that will store the settings in the repository that I've got selected here. Going back to the screen here for the root of the project, you can see I've got a number of sub-projects. I've got a couple of sub-projects just for testing purposes, and then we've got the BuildGraph sub-project that I've been showing so far. Sub-projects are a good way of grouping large projects together. It also means you can assign different permissions to sub-projects, so it's a nice way to divide who can run different parts of the build pipeline if that's required. So in here, we've got the CI build configuration, and this is the kind of basis for generating my dynamic build pipeline from the BuildGraph script. So I've shown this already. We've got the Lyra game attached here, so the Perforce stream that's attached. We've got our Unreal build step. You can also have automated triggers configured. So if I prefer not to run this manually, I can set up a VCS trigger. So every time a commit is made to any of the attached VCS routes, a new build can be automatically triggered in TeamCity. There's also the concept of quiet period settings. And this is quite useful if you don't want to run a build on every single commit. You can combine multiple commits in a period of time and run those under a single build, which is particularly useful if you're making use of cloud agents where you're paying for the build time. It can be more costly than on-premises build agents. If you prefer just to do a nightly build, then you can also configure a schedule trigger, and you can either do daily, weekly, or define the exact cron expression. Under the failure conditions screen, this is where you can tell TeamCity under what conditions a build will automatically be failed. And you can set a maximum time limit. You can also add custom failure conditions based on metric changes. So for example, if an artifact size is below a certain threshold, you can automatically fail a build. So lots of automated checks you can enable. There are also a bunch of different build features you can enable as part of the whole build pipeline. So for example, there is a build approval feature. So if you want to be able to integrate a gating process or an approval process as part of your build pipeline, maybe before a deployment is executed, you can use the build approval feature to say, maybe I want user Matt Ellis to approve this, as well as the project admins group and at least 2 users from that group. So until all of those approval rules have been met, this job will not be executed. We have a build cache feature. This can help cache certain dependencies between builds, quite useful if you are making use of single-use agents. We also have the concept of matrix builds, and this is a good way to run a single configuration multiple times without having to duplicate the logic. So for example, if you needed to run a configuration for multiple platforms, I could add a platform parameter and say maybe Windows and Linux, and this can run the same configuration multiple times. It will pass in a platform parameter, and you can reference the value to figure out what out of those two builds, which platform is currently being built, and then tweak the build accordingly. There's a notifications feature, so if you want to set up notifications for email or Slack, that's how you would do that. There's also a performance monitor, and this is a great way of monitoring the performance of a build when it runs on a build machine. So you get a nice chart at the end of this, and this is a good way to tell whether the build machine where the build is running is adequately resourced for the job it's currently executing. And then one final one I wanted to mention, there is also Commit Status Publisher, and this can help publish commit statuses over to your version control system, but we do also support Perforce Helix Swarm. So if you do use Helix Swarm, then TeamCity can update the status of commits over in Swarm, so quite useful. Okay, let me go back to one of the finished builds. So we've got, if you go back to one of the previous ones that was successful, we've got my dependencies graph here. Maybe if I go to package Linux client and go to number 44, we can see on the artifacts tab, we have the build artifacts associated with this particular finished job. One of the nice features, if you have a archive type file like a zip, you can extract that inside of the user interface without having to download it locally, although that can take a while if it's a fairly large file, as we can see here. On the parameters tab, we can see a full list of parameters that were used when this build was executed. So we get a full snapshot of the different configuration options, different environment variables, and all the different build tools that are pre-installed and the different version numbers. So it's a great way of going back and seeing exactly what state the build machine was in. So just very quickly, I just want to show the Unreal build step again. So if I come into here, I just want to show a bit more detail about some of the other options. So when I add a new Unreal Engine build step, you do have the option to choose or have automatic detection of Unreal Engine on the build machine. So there's a plugin or a TeamCity plugin on the agent side that monitors and knows all the different locations for Unreal Engine on the build machine. So when you define a particular version number here, it will try and use that version over on the build agent. Alternatively, you can do manual detection of Unreal Engine and specify the directory of the engine on the build machine. If we choose build cook run, then you can just specify the Unreal project that you want to run that against. So you can use the pop-up menu here and choose the lyra.u project. For the build configuration, you can choose whether you want to build the standalone game, client server, or the client and server. You can define the target configurations, and we have a pop-up menu showing the different options, and the same thing for target platforms. You can also parameterize these as well. So if you want to use parameters and tweak the behavior, you can do that accordingly. And you've got options here to say whether you want to perform cooking. And if I show the advanced options, you've got the ability to customize the cook, run, and package commands. We've got the BuildGraph option that I've already shown, and then the run automation as well. And this is how you can run the tests. So that's a walkthrough of TeamCity. We are adding additional features to the Unreal Engine integration, so do watch this space. There are more exciting things to come. So with that, let's go over to the Q&A.
네, 여러분 맷과 데니엘님이 준비해주신 세션 잘 보셨나요? 앞서 말씀드린 대로 Q&A 시작 전에 이제 첫 번째 이벤트 퀴즈 먼저 공개하도록 하겠습니다. 유튜브 채팅창에 선착순으로 답변을 남겨주시는 분에게 이제 70유로 상당, 한 10만 원 상당의 JetBrains 머천다이스 상품권 제공 예정입니다. 그러면 첫 번째 퀴즈를 한번 공개해 볼까요? 네, IDE 소프트웨어라는 이제 울펜스타인 3D라는 게임을 만들 때 어떤 IDE를 활용했을지 물어보는 질문 이제 첫 번째 퀴즈인데요. 빠르게 답변을 올려주시면 선착순으로 드리고 있으니까요. 답변을 기대해 보도록 하겠습니다. The fourth answer is like no, they didn't use IDEs. Do you think is that possible, Matt or Daniel?
Well, I can't believe you can write any game without Rider. Right, you have to use Rider. Can you imagine the game they would have made if they had Rider?
Okay, sorry. While you're talking, there has been a answer and winner. 네, 답변이 정답을 맞춰주신 분, 그 선착순으로 맞춰주신 분은 아마 채팅창에서 운영진이 정답자 태그에서 회신 드릴 예정이니까 유튜브 채팅창 유념해서 봐주시기 바랍니다. 그 정답은 나 볼란드였는데 아까 맷님이 아이디 없이는 절대 못할 거고 라이더 없이는 자기는 못한다라고 일단은 말씀해 주셨습니다. 네, 그 아쉽게도 혹시 못 맞춰주신 분들 또는 선착순으로 채택이 안 되신 분들은 Q&A 시간 끝나고 또 마지막 질문 남아 있으니까 끝까지 기회 잡아주시길 바랍니다. 본격적으로 Q&A 세션 이제 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 사전 등록 시 보내주신 질문들도 좀 있는데요. 라이브로 주신 것부터 먼저 시작해 보도록 하겠습니다. So we'll jump right into the questions. Was a first question from that was sent in live while you were doing the webinar. Will the AI assistant respond to casual conversations like ChatGPT? 네, 첫 번째 질문은 AI 어시스턴트는 챗GPT처럼 일상적인 대화에도 응답을 하는지 여쭤보셨습니다. Probably Matt is the person to go with this kind of question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure, I'll help. The AI assistant is intended to help with programming topics, so it'll usually only help with a technical question.
네, 아쉽지만 답변을 들어보니까 AI 어시스턴트, JetBrains AI 어시스턴트는 챗GPT와 좀 다르고 일반 질문에 대해서는 이제 답변을 하지 않게 이렇게 설계가 되어 있다고 합니다. Do you want to add anything on top of that?
Sorry, yeah, so you can also get it to answer other things as well, though. If you ask it to tell you a joke, it will say no. But if you ask it to tell you a joke about programming, then it'll tell you usually a pretty bad joke.
So it has to be programming related questions only.
Yes.
예, 그 맷님이 약간의 팁을 주셨는데 예를 들어서 이제 그 프로그래밍 그 좋은 조크 그러니까 농담을 알려달라고 하면은 그런 질문은 답변 안 한다고 답변을 할 건데 그래도 프로그래밍 관련해서 농담을 알려달라고 하면 답변을 할 거라고 합니다. 그렇지만 뭐 그 농담 자체가 많이 재밌지는 않을 수도 있다고 하는데요. 네, 혹시 그 원하는 답변이 아니셔서 좀 아쉽지만 답변이 잘 되셨는지 모르겠습니다. So we'll go on to the next question. I'll read it in Korean first, if you don't mind. 네, 라이더의 이제 타사의 CI/CD를 사용하지 않고 팀시티를 사용할 때 어떤 이점이 있을까요? 라고 해주셨고요. 팀시티의 경우 게임 개발자의 경우 파이프라인 빌드가 쉽지만 소규모의 커뮤니티와 적은 학습 경로 때문에 선택하기가 좀 어렵습니다. 라고 해주셨어요. So the question is is there an advantage to use TeamCity instead of using kind of third-party CI/CDs? For example, I think it's referring to Jenkins. And for kind of individual game developers, TeamCity makes it easier to build pipelines and all the features are there, but the small communities and a lot of learning materials are difficult to find, especially probably in Korean language. So it's hard to choose TeamCity as his or her main tool. I believe Daniel is the person to go to with this question. Daniel, do you have your opinions and answers for this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so there is an integration between Rider and TeamCity that makes it a good choice. So users can see the build results directly in Rider through the TeamCity tool window, and it's possible to run what we call a personal build from Rider. And a personal build is where you can push your uncommitted changes directly from the IDE to TeamCity and run it as a kind of personal or private build that's only visible to yourself. And this helps to ensure the proposed changes result in a successful build prior to committing them to version control.
네. 당연히 이제 라이더와 팀시티 모두 jetbrains 제공하는 툴들이다 보니까 연동에 이제 장점이 있는데요. 팀시티 패널을 패널 윈도우를 통해서 이제 라이더에서 직접 빌드 결과를 확인하실 수도 있고요. 라이더에서 이제 개인 빌드를 실행할 수 있다는 장점들이 몇 가지 예시가 될 수 있다고 합니다. 이제 개인 빌드라고 하는 거는 이제 퍼스널 빌드라고 하셨는데 하나의 기능 중에 하나인데 라이더와 팀시티에서 이제 개인 빌드를 하는 경우에는 원래 빌드가 되면은 완료돼서 배포가 되잖아요. 그렇지만 배포가 되기 전에 이제 개인 로컬에서 이제 테스트를 하기 때문에 그게 실제 다른 팀에는 영향을 미치지 않게끔 이제 테스트해보는 빌드를 돌릴 수 있다는 게 또 장점이 될 수도 있을 것 같습니다. Yeah, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so we're also
me.
looking to further enhance the integrations between all of the JetBrains IDEs and TeamCity in the future. So there's more that we'll see in that space. Plus, regarding the kind of community and support, so TeamCity is a commercially supported solution. So we do provide support to our customers so they know that they have a backing of a commercial company. So we can help with any questions on how to do things. We also have detailed documentation, and we have a public roadmap that outlines all of our plans for upcoming releases. And this information is all available through the TeamCity website.
네. 좀 차이점은 이제 죄송합니다. 공개되어 있는 다른 이제 오픈 소스 툴들과는 다르게 이제 팀시티는 이제 상업용 툴이고 돈을 이제 지불하고 사용하는 툴이다 보니까 jetbrain에서 공식 지원 채널들이 다 있습니다. 그리고 이제 질문에 대해서 도움을 드릴 수 있는 채널들을 활용하시면 되고요. 그렇지만 이제 다른 이제 오픈 소스 같은 경우에는 커뮤니티끼리 불확실성을 이제 가지고 이제 소통을 해야 됩니다. 그리고 이제 자세한 문서와 이제 헬프 문서들이 많이 공개되어 있거든요. 그리고 심지어 로드맵도 이제 마련되어 있어서 앞으로 어떤 것들이 출시될 건지도 나올 수도 있고요. 이 모든 것들은 사실 아마 채팅창에 한번 남겨주시면 좋을 것 같은데 jetbrains 팀시티 공식 웹사이트에 이제 채널들이 다 공개가 되어 있습니다. 그래서 그런 것들이 좀 차이점이라고 볼 수 있겠네요. 네. 그러면은 사전에 이제 등록해 주신 몇 가지 질문들로 넘어가도록 하겠습니다. Okay, thank you, Daniel, and we'll move on to some questions that was sent in to us before the webinar. I'll read it in Korean and then translate into English for you. 라이더의 AI 서비스 이용 중인데 아직 업데이트가 많이 필요해 보입니다. 업데이트 예정된 시기가 있는지 물어보는데요. Currently, this person who asked the question is using Rider and AI assistants at the same time. It seems that many things need to be improved and updated. Do you have any specific specific plan to improve AI support in Rider? And when is it coming, etc.?
Yeah, so let me answer that. We're
Okay.
constantly working on the AI assistant with updates both in the product in Rider and to the services that power the assistant. For example, in Rider 2024.2, we'll be using Google Bison as one of the models, for example.
네, 이제 라이더 팀도 계속해서 이제 AI 어시스턴트 업데이트에 많은 이제 노력을 투자하고 있는데요. 예를 들어서 라이더 2024.2 버전부터는 구글 바이즌이라는 이제 그 LLM 모델도 하나로 사용이 될 것이라고 합니다.
Yeah, and
Do you
we're
have-
also adding new features, new integrations, and updates to Rider as well to improve the experience there. But we'd love to get feedback on what you'd like to see improved. You can use the help menu in Rider to submit feedback to us. We'd love to hear it.
네. 라이더 자체에서도 이제 새로운 기능이랑 이제 그런 것들을 통합해서 제공하려고 많이 추가하고 개선하고 있는데, 여러분들이 이제 개선하고 되었으면 하는 부분이 있으면 또 의견이 있으면 언제든지 알려주실 수 있고요. 그 라이더에 보면 헬프 메뉴가 있습니다. 거기에서 피드백을 보내실 수 있고, 아마 한글로 보내셔도 다 요즘은 다 이제 언어 번역을 통해서 다 이해하시는 것 같으니까 한글로 보내셔도 무방할 거라고 생각됩니다. Okay, shall we move on to the next one? AI 어시스턴트에서 한국어 지원이 되는지 물어보셨네요. Does AI Assistant support Korean language on prompts and everything?
Yeah, it's another one for me. Rider 2024.2, which will be out in a few weeks, in a month or so, should get the option to choose which language the AI assistant, the chat, will use. Korean support is dependent on the support built into the large language models that we're using, though. Currently, we're using GPT 3.5 and 4, and so the Korean support is as good as those models give us. But we're also evaluating other models for the future, such as Google Bison.
네, 이제 라이더 2024.2에서 이제 AI 어시스턴트의 채팅에서 이제 언어 선택하는 기능이 옵션으로 추가될 거라고 합니다. 그래서 한국어를 선택해서 프롬프트를 적고 한국어로 답변을 받고 하실 수 있게 될 거고요. 한국어 지원은 이제 LLM, 대형 언어 모델, 라지 랭귀지 모델을 지원에 따라서 좀 달라지는데 현재는 ChatGPT 3.5랑 4를 다 사용하고 있다고 합니다. 그리고 앞으로 이제 2024.2에는 아까도 언급드렸지만 구글 바이전 모델도 사용할 거니까요. 이런 모델들이 그 LLM들이 이제 제공하는 수준의 번역이나 이제 그 답변이 주어질 수 있습니다. And are you expecting any more LLMs to be like integrated with the AI assistants?
Yeah, we're looking to add more models in the future. We use OpenAI right now. We're going to have Google Bison, and then there's other models that we're not ready to announce just yet.
네, 아직은 공개할 수 없지만 이제 오픈 AI 모델과 이제 구글 바이전까지는 공개할 수 있고 더 추가적으로도 더 모델을 추가하는 것을 고려하고 있다고 합니다. Okay, next question. 1인 개발을 하고 싶은데 프로그래밍이 없어도 가능할까요? I'd like to develop a game by myself, my own. But is it possible to develop a game without any programming? Probably he's referring to programming skills. Probably. Do you want to add some advice for this?
Sure. There are definitely frameworks and platforms that you can use to help develop a game without having to write code. But a more ambitious game will kind of tend to use an engine such as Unreal or Unity, and that will probably give you a more interesting game.
사실 프로그래밍 없이도 게임 개발할 수 있는 어떤 프레임워크나 플랫폼들이 좀 시장에 있는 걸로 알고 있지만 사실은 더 이제 뎁스 있는 그런 새로운 게임을 만들기 위해서는 기존에 있는 게임들은 또 이제 챗GPT나 AI를 활용해서 좀 할 수도 있겠지만 더 멋지고 더 새롭고 시장에서 좀 임팩트가 있는 그런 게임들을 만들기 위해서는 일반적으로는 이제 기존 언리얼이나 이제 유니티 같은 그런 엔진들이 좀 필요하지 않을까라고 좀 조언을 해주셨습니다. 지금 라이브로 질문이 더 없으면 사전 질문은 여기서 끝났거든요. 그래서 예정된 시간보다 한 5분 남았는데 저희가 여기서 마무리하는 것도 괜찮을 것 같습니다. 조금 늦은 시간까지 이렇게 들어주신 분들 많이 수고 많으셨습니다. 그러면은 shall we switch to some slides? 아, 맞다. 두 번째 퀴즈가 있군요. 두 번째 퀴즈를 꼭 해야죠. 이제 마지막 퀴즈를 공개해 보도록 하겠습니다. Shall we open the second quiz? 네, 오른쪽 및 왼쪽 사이드, 그러니까 숄더 버튼이 있는 컨트롤러를 갖춘 게임 콘솔은 어떤 것일까요? 여기 보기에 나와 있는데, so this question is asking who was the first to. While I'm saying, there's already an answer.
That was fast.
정답은 다 슈퍼 닌텐도 엔터테인먼트 시스템이었습니다. So Matt, around the shoulder buttons, when do you press that often?
I always
If you do
remember
it.
it. Yeah, I always remember it with PlayStation 1 and Wipeout. I loved that game, and the shoulder buttons were great for making you drift round corners, and you could really you could get gold quite easily with a bit of drifting.
맷님한테 언제 자주 누르는지 여쭤봤는데 플레이스테이션에서 어떤 레이싱 게임 할 때 드리프트 할 때 이 버튼을 많이 누르곤 했다네요. How about you, Daniel? Do you ever play console games and press those shoulder buttons?
So my earliest console was actually the PS3, but before that I was mostly a kind of PC gamer. Fortunately, I don't have much time for gaming these days.
아쉽지만 PC 게임 위주로 해서 콘솔 게임을 많이 안 해봤다고 하시네요. 그리고 요즘에는 워낙 바쁘다 보니까 또 게임할 시간도 많이 없다고 하시네요. 좀 아쉽습니다. 네, 저는 뭐 개인적으로 피파 할 때 전력 질주 버튼으로 많이 누르고 있는 것 같아요. 그 운영진들이 이제 채팅창에 정답자 태그해서 다시 회신 드릴 예정이니까요. 정답자분 축하드리고요. 이제 유튜브 채팅창을 유념해서 봐주시기 바랍니다. 다음 이제 웨비나는 이제 마무리됐으니까 없고요. 소식을 좀 채널들을 알려드리겠습니다. jetbrains 소식을 받아보실 수 있는 채널들을 화면에 이제 공유드리고 있는데요. 이제 jetbrains 홈페이지 한국어로 잘 되어 있고 라이더 페이지도 한국어로 잘 되어 있습니다. 그리고 블로그 한국어로 되어 있는 블로그도 있고 트위터죠. X에도 라이더 채널이 따로 있습니다. 네. 그리고 발표자분들의 트위터도 들어가서 이렇게 메시지 남기시면은 잘 추가적인 질문에 대해서 답변을 해주실 걸로 예상됩니다. So Matt and Daniel, thanks for your time and all your efforts building this happen. Do you want to say any last words for today's webinar?
Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you'll give Rider and TeamCity a go with your Unreal projects. It can be a great combination and there should be some great tooling. Let us know how you get on.
네, 이렇게 툴들 한 번쯤은 이제 사용을 한번 해보시면서 피드백을 언제든지 환영한다고 하셨습니다. And Daniel?
Pretty much exactly what Matt said. So thanks so much, everyone.
네, 감사하다고 생각하고 매시랑 동일하게 여러분들이 좀 활용해보고 피드백을 많이 들어보고 싶다고 하셨습니다. 그리고 이번 2차례 연속으로 세미나 하는데 뒤에서도 많이 도와주시는 조정 매니저님이라고 우리 JetBrains 마케팅 해주시는 여러분 스태프들도 많은 감사의 말씀을 드리도록 하겠습니다. 그러면 여기서 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. Bye then. We can say goodbye now.
Bye.
So
See you
everyone,
in next
thank you for
webinars.
joining.
Thank you.